Welcome to a new fantasy adventure on Dreamscape. In this action-packed story, the muscular barbarian Korthan fights against an overpowering beast horde attacking a village. With grim determination and his mighty axe, he fights the beasts. The biggest gesture you can give me is a like. If you like my stories, feel free to leave a subscription and activate the bell so you don't miss any more stories. Well then, let's dive into the story. Korthan's fight against the beast horde. Thunder filled the air as the barbarian Korthan charged up the hill with his axe drawn. Before him stretched the valley of grim Thor, from which resounded blood-curdling screams and the clang of weapons. A monstrous horde had invaded and was attacking the village that had lain peacefully among the mountains. Korthan clenched his fist around the axe handle. He would stop these beasts, no matter what the cost. With a furious battle cry, the muscular warrior leapt down the last of the rocks and charged at the marauding creatures. His axe whizzed in a wide arc and severed the head of one of the attackers. It was a misshapen, hulking creature with blunt fangs. More and more of the monsters charged roaring at Korthan. The barbarian whirled his axe and slaughtered beasts right and left. Black blood splattered, limbs flew, but more and more opponents poured in. Korthan gritted his teeth. He couldn't let up now, even though the effort was already pushing him to his limits. The monsters would not stop until all life was extinguished. He had to hold out. More and more of the beasts fell under Korthan's axe blows. But there seemed to be no end to it. For every enemy killed, two more charged at the barbarian. Korthan was panting heavily under the strain of the incessant battle. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream rang out behind him. Korthan wheeled around and froze. At the edge of the village rose a gigantic creature, as tall as a house. Its body was cloaked in dark scale armor, and fire poured from its maw. For a moment, Korthan was overcome by naked panic. How could he defeat this huge beast? But he pulled himself together. He had to find a way at any price. The villagers were counting on him. Enraged, the barbarian plunged again into the ranks of the smaller monsters. He fought like mad, driven by anger and desperation. His axe was soon ragged and blunt, so many enemies had it torn apart. But the beasts did not diminish. More and more of them poured out of the gates of the underworld into the Valley of Men. Korthan backed away toward the village. If he could not stop the beast, they would all be lost. Panic cries from the villagers wafted over to Korthan as the huge beast ate through the huts, setting everything ablaze. There had to be a way to stop it. Korthan thought feverishly as he fought. There, his eyes fell on a plank full of burning torches on a house wall. A mad idea sprouted in him. With a swift movement, Korthan tore the torches from their holders. Then he whirled them around his head and ran roaring toward the beast. The beast just opened its fiery mouth to spit another beam at the village. At that moment, Korthan threw the burning torches into the monster's jaws with all his might. With a blood-curdling roar, the monster leapt back. It flapped its wings and rammed its head against the ground, but the flames ate inexorably through its insides. Korthan had to turn away as the inferno consumed the monster from within. With a final blood-curdling scream, it crashed to the ground. A blast of heat swept over Korthan, then silence fell. Exhausted and breathing heavily, the barbarian leaned on his axe for a moment. The fight had pushed him to his limits. But he could not give up now. There were still many of the smaller beasts left. With a battle cry, Korthan threw himself back into the fray. Now that their leader was defeated, many of the monsters took flight. But a hardcore fought undoggedly. Korthan let his axe circle and drove the creatures before him. One by one, they fell to Korthan's merciless blade. Finally, the last survivor fled in panic. Panting and exhausted, Korthan leaned on his axe. It was done. But suddenly he heard the cries of a woman from a collapsed hut. Immediately, Korthan rushed in and rescued the villager from the rubble. She was injured, so he carefully lifted her up and carried her away from the flames. At a safe distance, he dressed her wounds with strips of cloth. That was all he could do at the moment. But the woman thanked him profusely. Without his help, she would have been lost. Gradually, other villagers emerged from their hiding places. Infinite relief was written on their faces when they saw that the beasts were defeated. They could hardly believe their luck. Cheering people now flocked to Korthan. They could hardly believe that the creature's attack had been repelled. "How can we ever thank you?" the village leader cried through his tears. Korthan just smiled and put his hand on the man's shoulder. Then he made his way out of the valley. His work was done, he could now move on. Somewhere out there, people would need his help. He had fought enough for today,